Everyone thinks that monsters of the Midway refers purely to the terrifying, suffocating defenses of the Chicago Bears, a nickname forged in the roar of a Super Bowl shuffle or the thunder of a Ditka-era hit. It's a comfortable, widely accepted truth, rooted in decades of gridiron brutality. But what if the true horror, the real monstrous origin of that iconic name, predates even the very idea of a modern football defense? What if the echoes of that name whisper a far older, darker secret, stretching beyond the gridiron and into the very fabric of Chicago itself, a truth more unsettling than any bone-jarring tackle? Prepare to question everything you thought you knew. The genesis of giants. To truly understand the monstrous, to grasp the profound depth of the Bears' identity, we must journey back to a time when football was not merely a game, but a raw, brutal, and often unregulated spectacle. Before the Super Bowl, before television deals, before polished stadiums and corporate sponsorships, there was a man named George Halas. A titan of industry and sport, he was a force of nature who single-handedly wrestled professional football into existence from the muddy fields of a small Illinois town. He wasn't just building a team, he was forging an identity, a spirit of uncompromising dominance born from the grit and steel of industrial America. Was it the sheer, unadulterated strength of these early titans, clashing on rudimentary fields, their faces caked in mud, that first earned them the monster moniker? Or was it something more primal, a reflection of the burgeoning, formidable city they represented? A rare and intriguing detail often overlooked is that George Halas himself once played, coached, and owned the team simultaneously, essentially being the Chicago Bears for decades, a one-man colossus shaping the very foundations of professional football. His vision wasn't just about winning, it was about overwhelming, about a physical supremacy that instilled fear before a single snap was even taken. But even in these foundational years, was the Midway aspect purely geographical, a simple nod to their central Chicago home? Or was there a deeper, more unsettling context lurking, a shadow cast by the city's storied, sometimes macabre, past that informed this seemingly simple designation? What primal connection did this nascent team have to the spirit of a city whose very existence was a testament to raw ambition and relentless striving? The Roaring Forties and the defensive reign. As the decades turned, as the NFL slowly found its footing and began to capture the nation's imagination, the legend of the Chicago Bears began to solidify, hardened by their relentless pursuit of victory. The Roaring 1940s, in particular, saw not just an offensive machine that obliterated opponents with unprecedented scores, but even then, a defensive intensity began to manifest, a relentless, suffocating pursuit that set them apart from every other franchise. Teams didn't just play the Bears, they survived them, often limping away with bruised bodies and broken spirits. What kind of collective will create such an unstoppable force, a legacy of dominance that persists, decade after decade, through an ever-evolving sport? Was it merely the unwavering commitment to a brand of smash-mouth football that carved their reputation into the league's consciousness, or a darker, more inherent ferocity, a barely contained savagery that opponents could feel seeping into their bones? A particularly vivid and enduring testament to this era's terrifying prowess is the fact that even before their legendary 1985 triumph, the Bears won 8 NFL championships, with the 1940 team famously crushing Washington 73-0, a score so lopsided it still stands as the biggest shutout victory in NFL history, demonstrating their early, terrifying offensive and defensive prowess. This wasn't mere victory, it was annihilation. A psychological assault that left opponents not just defeated, but utterly demoralized, questioning their very capacity to compete. They became the apex predators of the gridiron, a truly monstrous presence. But the Midway still lingers in the name. A ghost in the machine. What profound, perhaps unsettling, connection did this city, this location, have to the terrifying persona these teams adopted? Was it a simple, convenient coincidence, or a deliberate, almost ritualistic embrace of a historical legacy that imbued the name with a power far beyond its surface meaning? The unseen hand of grit and glory. The blueprint for the Bears' unique brand of football was irrevocably set. Through changing eras, through advancements in strategy and athletic prowess, the essence of the Chicago Bears remained, an unyielding, hard-nosed defense that broke wills as much as it broke offenses. The 1963 team stands as another chilling testament to this enduring philosophy, a squad that stifled opponents with an almost supernatural efficacy, reducing high-powered offenses to sputtering, ineffective machines. How did this tradition of defensive dominance persist so stubbornly, so consistently, seemingly passed down like an ancestral curse or a sacred blessing from one generation of Bears to the next, immune to the fleeting trends of the league? A truly striking and almost mythological fact is that the 1,963 Bears held opponents to a mere 10 points per game across a 14-game season, a defensive dominance so absolute it feels almost incomprehensible in the modern era of high-scoring offenses. This wasn't just strategically sound football, it was an act of brutal assertion, a constant, physical declaration of superiority that left no room for doubt. It was a team identity forged in the fires of endless competition, mirroring the resilience, the rugged spirit, and the unyielding ambition of Chicago itself, a city built on raw power and relentless striving. But the name, Monsters of the Midway, still holds a secret, a deeper implication that eludes casual understanding. A whisper of something older, more profound than mere athletic prowess or geographical convenience. What unseen hand guided this precise designation? What forgotten truth does it conceal about the very soul of Chicago and its most iconic sports franchise, a truth waiting in the shadows of history to be unearthed? The 1985 Super Bowl Shuffle and the apex predator. Then came 1985. The year the legend wasn't just retold, it was performed on the grandest stage imaginable. A Super Bowl Shuffle that became a cultural phenomenon, an anthem for an entire generation, a defense that became legendary, and a swagger that redefined an entire league. This team wasn't just feared, it was an event, a spectacle, a phenomenon of unmatched dominance. They were the quintessential monsters of the Midway, a perfectly orchestrated symphony of defensive destruction and offensive efficiency. Walter Payton, Mike Singletary, Richard Dent, Jim McMahon, they weren't just players, they were icons, larger than life, embodying the very essence of what it meant to be a Bear. Their raw power, their unshakable confidence, their sheer, unadulterated ferocity, cemented the nickname in football history as never before. But even as they cemented the nickname, as they became the most visible manifestation of the monster ethos, were they merely fulfilling a prophecy, or were they unknowingly echoing a far deeper, more unsettling reality about the city they called home, a truth hidden in plain sight? They didn't just win, they devoured. A relentless, suffocating press that left opponents gasping for air, their will broken, their spirit crushed under an avalanche of overwhelming force. This was the ultimate expression of the monster ethos, the culmination of decades of inherited grit and pride. But the Midway, it still demands answers. Why that specific geographic reference, beyond the obvious Chicago location? What hidden layers of meaning, what chilling historical footnotes, are woven into that seemingly innocuous phrase, a phrase that has, until now, been taken for granted? The unveiling, the real Midway. For decades, we've accepted Monsters of the Midway as a straightforward tribute to their location and their unparalleled ferocity on the football field. A simple, powerful nickname that perfectly encapsulated their identity. But what if the very simplicity of that explanation is a smokescreen? What if the Midway in question isn't just a part of Chicago, but a specific, infamous location with a history so bizarre, so captivating, and so profoundly monstrous in its own right, that it forever stained the city's consciousness, leaving an indelible mark on its psyche? What if the nickname isn't merely descriptive, born from a sportswriter's clever turn of phrase, but rather evocative, a spectral link to an unsettling past, a name born not from casual observation, but from the deep, collective unconscious of a city marked by a truly unparalleled spectacle? A spectacle that once drew millions, enthralled them, and perhaps, subtly warped their perception of what monstrous truly meant. The shadows of history are long, and sometimes, the most profound truths are hidden in the most obvious places. Could it be that the true origin of this legendary moniker lies not on the football field, but in a forgotten chapter of Chicago's past, a testament to a time when the city itself was a stage for the extraordinary and the terrifying? The growing tension you feel, the unease, is not misplaced. The answers are closer than you think, waiting to be unearthed from beneath layers of common understanding. the key fact. The truth is far stranger, and perhaps, far more disturbing, than any football legend or heroic tale. The Midway, in Monsters of the Midway, isn't just a casual reference to Chicago's central location or the University of Chicago stadium that was once home to the team. It is a direct, chilling echo of a specific, sensational, and deeply controversial part of Chicago's history, the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition's infamous Midway Plaisance. This sprawling district was a carefully curated area of exotic, often exploitative, and sometimes genuinely disturbing sideshows, freak shows, cultural exhibits showcasing primitive peoples from around the globe, and scandalous entertainments that captivated and horrified millions of visitors. Right in the heart of Chicago, the Midway Plaisance was a place where human oddities were displayed for public gawking, where the exotic was fetishized, and where the very boundaries of normalcy were deliberately blurred for mass consumption. It was a spectacle of the other, a place of fascination and discomfort, where the monstrous was put on display, challenging perceptions and stirring primal emotions. The early Chicago Bears, with their ferocious, unconventional play, their overwhelming physical presence, and their groundbreaking dominance, became the gridiron embodiment of that same compelling, terrifying spectacle, a team of human monsters, unleashed upon the established, genteel world of professional sports, reflecting the city's primal fascination with power, spectacle, and the unconventional, almost grotesque, display of raw, undeniable dominance. The nickname wasn't just about their location, it was about their very nature, a direct reference to the most shocking and talked about spectacle Chicago had ever known. So, when you hear Monsters of the Midway, remember, it was never just about football.